everyone, it's Carolyn from Mommy Ramblings, and I'm here speaking today with Gary Revel, his book, Memoir, To Live or Maybe Not. You started writing this in 2004? Is that the one that was first published?
2006.
2006.
Yeah, 2006.
And then you've made revisions to it?
Yeah, as I went along and was able to talk about more, I kind of tweaked it a little as I went along.
Okay. Well, I mean, when I got the book a few weeks ago, I was in just a Zoom meeting with some of my moderators, and I was just leafing through it, and I'm like, wait a minute, when my mother was her murder case dismissed, and I was like, wow, that's that's something, right? So, but that happened at a very young age, right? And before we even get into that, why don't you tell everyone like a little bit about yourself and give them a little bio? And thank you for coming on today.
Okay, well, I was born in Alabama, a little town in Alabama. Very, very humble beginnings. My mother divorced my dad when I was 5, and I grew up in Florida for the most part. Graduated high school in Bonifay, Florida, at Holmes County, Holmes County High School, and joined the U.S. Navy. Did some things during the Vietnam War, various kinds of operations and missions, and later investigated the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. and President John F. Kennedy with in association with the House Select Committee on Assassinations. I lived in Hollywood, in L.A. for over 30 years. New York, I was in the music, movie, and eventually book publishing business. Lived in New York City, Memphis, Nashville, the music capitals, because I was in the music business quite a bit. I had my first rock and roll band when I was like 15, 16 years old. So I was in entertainment all during this time. I was doing all these other things as well.
Okay.
I founded a church in Los Angeles, was pastor for a while. I founded a nonprofit, Mother Nature Festival Live Incorporated, which is a nonprofit 501c3 corporation with a mission to stop global warming. Okay. And now I'm just starting to put my I've published over 40 books. Mm-hmm. Company genre books, and I'm just starting to put those books on audio, to release audio books on this.
Okay, so now the other funny thing I noticed was that you were born in Florala, Alabama, and I had just had an interview like the week before with a woman that came from Florala. She was born there, and she was the first Jewish president of College of New Jersey. And she said, I'm from this small town, no one's ever heard of it. And then literally the next book I get, I'm like, this is crazy. What are the odds of that? So that and the thing about your mother really struck me. So your mother owned a bar, right? And this was in Alabama?
That's right.
Right. And then there was, you were 10 years old, you were already playing poker down at the bar.
Yeah.
Right. And she's like, you got to go to school tomorrow. Get to bed, buddy.
Right.
Right. And then tell us what happened, because that's...
Well, it was a very traumatic event in my life. I went to bed, and later I heard, noise. And I got up and went in. I saw one of my friends, a family friend, laying on the floor in a pool of blood. And what had happened, after I went to bed, Stud, a patron named Stud, came in, and he was I forget, he was either the son or the nephew of the local police department chief there in Nashville, Florida. And he always caused trouble. He'd come in, start drinking, get in fights. And so his dad had already told my mom, don't let him drink. Don't serve him when he comes in. Mm-hmm. And the police, told her, don't serve that guy. He just causes trouble. So he came in and came over and sat at the bar by Wild Eye. Wild Eye was the friend that later was killed. Wild Eye was the friend, and he ordered a beer, and my mother said, "Stud, you know I can't serve you. You know you're going to get drunk, start fights, and I just can't serve you." And he cussed a little bit about it, and she said, "Here, you can have this." She gave him a Coke. That was back when the Coke bottles were those little 6-ounce glass bottles.
Right.
And they were pretty heavy and durable. So he swigged the Coke down, and he turned to Wild Eye. Wild Eye was sitting right beside him. They were in an L-shaped bar. They were like at the smaller L.
Mm-hmm.
It was on the seats there. They were kind of sitting together. And he told Wild Eye, he said, "I'm fixing to put that little lady to sleep for a long time." And he had the Coke bottle by the neck of it, and he drew it back to hit her because she was right there.
Right.
And then she saw saw the movement out of the corner of her eye, and reached in and grabbed her pistol and raised it up and tried to fire it to hit the bottle. But when she pulled the trigger, it just clicked. And then she panicked, and she just started clicking. And then when it did fire, Wild Eye had reached over with his left hand and grabbed Stud's right hand like that was holding the bottle. And as she was trying to hit the bottle, when it finally did fire, the bullet hit Wild Eye right there in his temple. And that killed him. And she went to jail. I mean, I went and lived with friends and family for a couple of months while they were kind of ironing it out, and they finally dismissed it because it wasn't homicide. It was an accidental. Right. And I have always felt a little responsible for it because me and my older brother had taken the gun out and target practiced in the backyards, and we hadn't completely reloaded it. Right. So when she pulled it out and fired that first shot, she would probably hit his hand.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
If we didn't fully reload it, she fired it. And it didn't fire, so she panicked. Yeah.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Yeah, and then someone came and got you guys, and you saw your mother, going off and having to go live with relatives. Is that when you went to live in Dunedin? Because I know Dunedin. My husband's sister used to live there for many years. We almost bought a house there in Dunedin.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's funny, like all these towns, but Dunedin, Safety Harbor, I've heard of all those. But you were down.
I lived. No, we moved there after my mom got out of jail. I was living in Tampa with an aunt.
Okay.
When she got out of jail, I had an Uncle Bill and Mildred. We called her Aunt Millie. Mm-hmm. They lived in Dunedin. He worked for the orange juice folks there. That was a big employer there.
Right.
And we went and lived. Really, they fixed their garage up for us to live in temporarily. Mm-hmm. Until we could find a house. So we lived in their garage for a while there in Dunedin.
And how many kids were there at the time?
Well, at the time there was me and my younger brother, Cecil Ray Fillingham. He was a brother from the same mother but a different father.
Right.
And then Kenny got out of the reform school. He had been in the reform school up in near Tallahassee. Which it turned out had been a very bad place. I mean, they found out that the kids were murdered and everything in that place. But when he got out of the reform school, he came down. My other brother, Benny, was already in the Navy, and my older sister, she had already married and went to. Well, no, she wasn't married. Oh, she wasn't married at that time. She was going with a guy from Ybor City, from Tampa, a Cuban. We lived there for a while. Then we got a house, and then we moved to Safety Harbor, and then to Bartow. But we had lived in Largo even before that. When I was only like 3 or 4 years old. Mm-hmm. But I know that area really well. That whole central, even South Florida. I know Florida really well.
Yeah. And then you ended up going to the U.S. Navy, right?
Right.
And that was, what year was that? Was that during the Vietnam War?
Yeah. When I went in the Navy in 1967, I joined the Navy. I just graduated high school, and what had happened there, I had two brothers who were already in the Navy and in Vietnam during my senior year of high school.
Mm-hmm.
We would have, Navy recruiter come and talk to some of us about the possibility of enlisting. But my principal had a different idea. He arranged for me to meet with Congressman Robert Sykes, who was our congressman for that panhandle of Florida. And Robert Sykes, they knew about my brothers being in the Navy and all that. So he told me, he said, listen, he said, I want you to give you a test. He said, you may be a candidate for the Naval Academy. I might want to appoint you to go to the Naval Academy. So I took the test. He told me, he said, don't do nothing. He said, I know you want to get in right away. He said, but don't do anything. Just wait till you hear from me. Well, I wasn't the kind to wait on things. I figured, I wanted to get in the fight. I was that kind of a person. So sure enough, I enlisted, and I was at boot camp one day, and my company commander came and said, Gary, they want you at the personnel office. And so I ran to the personnel office. Now you have to run when you're in boot camp. If you're not marching with your company, if you're a recruit, you better be running.
Right.
So I ran to the personnel office, and they ushered me in back to his office. When I came into the room, he looked at me really funny. He said, Seaman Recruit Revel, come over and sit down. So I sat down. He said, we've gotten a letter from your congressman, and today we got a phone call.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems that you scored highest on his Naval Academy application test than anyone he's ever had take it. And he wants you in an officer program right away.
Right.
Well, that was the day my life changed. That was the day I started learning that, what you appear to be to the public is not necessarily what you may be and what you may be doing. Because I learned about covert operations and naval intelligence and defense intelligence, just a lot of stuff, and just entered a whole different world.
Okay. And then how long did you spend in the Navy?
I got my honorable discharge after a little over 2 years because my cover had been blown, and I had already suffered attempts on my life. I'd been shot, and I'd been nicked, and several other things. So the government and me, myself, and I, we decided it would be better if I kind of disappear into civilian life for a while.
Right. And then, so you got out, you got an honorable discharge, and take us, where did you go from that point?
Well, I went to Hollywood.
Hollywood.
Just Hollywood, California. Just maybe a couple of weeks before I got my discharge, I was playing in a club down there. At the time I was singing and playing guitar at some clubs. And this one club, the manager told the folks there, he said, look, this might be the last time you see Gary because he's getting out of the Navy. He'll be moving on. And one of the person in the bar came over to me and handed me a card. And he said, you give me a call when you get out. And I said, okay. And I just put it in my pocket. I didn't normally look at them while I was, working. So when I got home that night, when I got to my room on the barracks, I pulled it out and looked at it. And it's an agent from Hollywood, California. So when I got out, I just took my guitar. I went to Hollywood, California. So that's how I got to Hollywood.
Right, and then did you record some records?
Oh yeah, within 2 months I was in. The first recording studio I ever walked into was Capitol Records. Now the stuff I recorded for them, eventually some of it was released independently, but I never really took the deal that I was offered from at the beginning of things. But I went on and recorded a lot of independent records, did a soundtrack for the motion picture Last of the American Hobos. And had a lot of work in records release, songwriting, in the music industry, even though I didn't sign with Capitol.
Right. And then, so this was about what, 69, 70, 1970?
Yeah, I got to Hollywood in '69. I left Hollywood about '72. New York City, Memphis, Nashville. Back to Florida. Got married. Went back to Nashville. Uh, then I lived in Nashville for about 10 years, so till 1980. And then in 1980, I moved my family. I had a wife and 3 kids by then, and I moved us all back to Hollywood, California.
Okay, so I mean, of all the places, so at that point you'd lived in a lot of different places, and you went back to Hollywood. Was that because for recording career, or were you looking for something else? Why did you go back to Hollywood from Nashville?
As it happened, that's what the plan was. I had put out an album titled Revel, Revel, or Revel. Some people pronounce Revel, Revel, so that's okay.
Okay.
And my friend David Kavanaugh, who was vice president of Capitol Records, called me there at A Cup Rose one day. I was working with A Cup Rose Music. It was the #1 country music publishing company at the time, in the 1970s and 1980. But he called me and said, I want to put this out. He said, but you're in Nashville. He said, you need to get back out here. So that's basically why I went back to Hollywood.
Okay, and so your family's still young. You're moving across the country again, and then how long did you stay out in Hollywood this time?
Well, I for over 30 years.
Oh, okay.
I got back in 1980, and I didn't leave until 2007.
Oh, all right. And then you had 6 kids?
By the time after I was in Hollywood, and I already had 3 kids when I left Nashville. In Hollywood, I had 3 more. So I had my youngest, Sonny America's Revel, was born in '85. So he was my youngest. So I had 3 more. I had Elizabeth, Rebecca, and then Sonny. And then we lived in Hollywood for like about 10 years. Then we moved out to Canoga Park, and we lived in Canoga Park in the Valley, in the Los Angeles Valley, there for about 20 years.
Right. And 2013, I was reading it, you had a lot of loss, right? Your son, your brother, your mother, all within months of each other.
Yeah, that
I'm
was
so
pretty,
sorry for that.
that was pretty rough, yeah.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, that's, so that had to be, yeah, definitely very, very tough year. And where were you living at that time? Were you
In Texas.
in Texas, back in Texas? Okay.
My son, Layman Revel, he died of cancer at 38 years of age.
Wow, so sorry. Was he married? Did he have kids? Or
He was, yeah, he was married. He said he's got a couple of kids. Right?
And then your brother passed to your brother.
My brother just passed. My oldest brother, B.C. Revels. Now he spent 30-something years in the Navy, retired as CWO2, and had just many. He was a CNR rescueman. He was an electrician. He did a lot of things for the Navy. One of his jobs was rescuing people. Searching. CNR rescue or search and rescue. He was the guy who would go down from the helicopter. Get people, or dump in the water and save people. And on one occasion, he got a lot of awards while he was doing stuff like that. On one occasion, they were in the mountains there in California. He was stationed at Lemoore Naval Air Station there in California, and they went up the Sierras, and there was a man trapped on the side of the mountain. He was just on a ledge, and he couldn't move. He couldn't move, and so they went up to get him, and the pilot told Benny, he said, I can't get close enough, because the helicopter's blades are much,
Right. Yeah.
wider than the helicopter. He said, we can't get close enough to get him. Then he said, look, he said, you just hold it real steady and I'll go down and I'll swing into that mountain. I'll get him.
Right.
So he went down and he had learned to rappel. Actually, he taught he invented a certain way to rappel down and up the rope that the Navy probably uses to this day. But anyway, he went down and he swung on that cable back and forth until he reached that guy. He grabbed him, and then he just started tying him to him. I guess it was a rope, not a cable, but he just started tying him to himself. And then they couldn't pull him up at that time. They didn't have the equipment to do this, so they flew like about 5 miles and just lowered him slowly to the ground. But he would do stuff like that. Yeah, he got a lot of awards for saving folks' lives.
That's a good thing, yeah. Okay, and then tell us how you got involved in the investigation of Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination.
I was working with Jack Kershaw. Jack was an attorney. He was a friend of mine first. I met him when I went to Nashville in the early 1970s. Jack was one of the first people I met, him and his wife. And after a few months, I started helping him out a little bit. He'd help me out a little bit, and I did some investigations for him and stuff like that. But now, see, nobody knew. I was always undercover. I mean, anybody who knew me just knew me as a songwriter or recording artist and a friend of Jack Kershaw's. They had no idea I was doing some really dangerous stuff for him. But one day he came into the office. I had a desk in his office, which was maybe 10 feet across the room from him. And he walked over and he laid down this newspaper article telling about he had taken James Oay as a client. And he said, I want you to put some of your naval intelligence training to work and investigate the Martin Luther King assassination. Well, I didn't really take to that right away, because I knew, man, that would be some dangerous work, I said, I'm gonna have to think about that, and it's kind of a process to where I got. Do you want me to go into the whole thing?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't want to do it because I knew, I had a wife and young children. I knew I'd be putting myself, my family, and really everybody knew I knew at risk if I did it. Right. So I wasn't going to do it. So we had the church that I was going to happened to have these rolling revivals where they would have a revival at one church one night and then another church the next night, and it would go like that. And so I was going to one of those, and then the third or fourth night, I believe it was, I was at a black church, of African Americans, and I was the only white person in the church. But the pastor who I knew, I mean, not well, but we'd seen each other around, but he knew nothing about the kind of work I did. He just knew me as a church member and a friend. He probably knew I was a friend of Jack Kershaw's, because Jack Kershaw was a fairly famous lawyer in Nashville in that time. He had already, and not always the best kind of reputation, but anyway. So he finished preaching and he came back. I was sitting like the second to the last row. And he said, Gary, God wants me to tell you something. And I said, well, okay, of course. And he said, well, God wants you to quit playing around in the shallow water and get on out there where it's deep. Well, he had no idea, what I was considering at the time. But I felt like it was the witness from God, and I just, at that point, I knew, okay, you're going to be investigating the King assassination, and that's when I finally said, okay, and that's where I made up my mind to do it.
Okay, and can you tell us anything about that investigation? What did you? I don't think you think it was one shooter, right? Or
well, okay, well that's kind of involved also. Because what I did, I didn't just go and say, okay, Jack, I'm going to do it. I went and met with Jack again. And I said, look, I want to do this. I said, but I have to meet James Oay. I have to meet him. I have to look in his eye. I have to shake his hand. I have to, get to know him a little bit, because I've got to know in my heart and mind that he either is or he is not a killer. See, a killer, someone who would kill someone in cold blood. Now, you learn this in my kind of work, okay?
Right.
Most people wouldn't know this, but they have certain traits and certain things. And if you talk to them for 5 minutes and start really getting to know them, you can pretty well tell if this guy, if you can say, okay, I'm going to give you $1,000 to kill so-and-so, whether they would immediately say, okay, I'll do it, and they would do it, So I had to meet James. I had, and Jack said, okay, that's no problem. So he arranged for me. He called Brushy Mountain Prison, the warden. He arranged for me to meet with James Oay.
Mm-hmm.
My first meeting was about 3 hours. First I let him just start talking to me. I told him, just tell me the truth. I said, it's not going to go anywhere past me. But he knew that because he had been an MP in the army in Germany before, and so he knew how the government worked and how military worked, and I had told him about my work and what I did, so he was confident that he could tell me anything,
Right.
because he knew that we really got along good, and it got so good I started calling him Jimmy. He liked to be called Jimmy's, so I would just call him Jimmy. But he told me, his whole story.
Mm-hmm.
And how he was, part of that group that killed King, but he wasn't the killer, he wasn't the shooter, but it's very involved.
Right. Yeah.
And I came away from that meeting thinking that he probably did not do it, but still I had to investigate it to find out for myself for sure.
Right. And then, how many years did that take you? Did you work that investigation?
That part of it was only a year, because the House Assassinations Committee that I was associated with, they had trouble with funding. They had to go back and get more money and stuff like that. And then things that happened during the investigation. My brother got killed, and one of my most powerful and important associates, who was going to testify at the House Assassinations Committee, he was shot and killed a week before he was to testify.
Wow.
And they managed to get all of my records that I had developed over about a year investigating, that I felt like could prove that the matter once and for all. Well, they got those. They disappeared. So by the end of the year, I knew that my abilities to really finish that thing and make a difference, what was not just, it wasn't going to happen.
Okay. And then, wasn't there something where they took you somewhere and threatened you about?
Oh yeah, I was threatened a number of times. That one occasion, I think you might be referring to something that's in my book.
Yeah.
After my brother was killed. Well, let me tell you about that first. I got a call, and I was in Nashville with my wife and kids. I got a call one day from my mother saying, Gary, Ray is dead. Well, Ray was what we called my younger brother, Cecil Ray Fillingham. And she said she had went to the store and came home. The front door was open. She walked through the house. She called his name, because normally the front door wasn't open. So
right, yeah.
Figured something was wrong. She looked in his bedroom, and then as you'd walk through the house, go through the living room, the dining room, and then we had built a Florida room at the back of the house, which is like a window with a little room with all windows, plants and stuff.
Yep.
She walked through that, and then at the back door was open also. She walked in the back door and looked to her right through the side door, regular door at the garage, and right in the frame of the door was her son, 19-year-old son, hanging from the rafter.
Ugh.
And she ran in, she got a stool or something, cut him down, and was trying to revive him, but he was dead. And then she called me, so I came down. met with the police. I got a newspaper man to come out and canvass the neighborhood. And it was through talking to the neighborhood that I found out that someone saw just next door a house where the back windows looked right into my backyard. A girl had seen two men carry my brother out the back door into the garage. So there was no doubt that he was murdered. But the police, police was just trying to make it that it was like a suicide. But it was then when I got a call, you need to come talk to us. That's when I ended up down in Miami.
Miami.
Yeah, I met these guys at the Fontainebleau Hotel by the swimming pool. We got in their car, went out to a really nice estate type house, and in the conference room was where I got threatened. First, the guy said, "Well, you're looking to be fitted with cement shoes." And I said, "Well, I don't really threaten like that. You can say that all you want to." And then the guy on the intercom said, "Well, you don't want what happened to your brother to happen to your wife and children, do you?" And of course, I didn't.
Right. Yeah.
So eventually, I did start being even more careful, and eventually, after William Sullivan was killed, and he was supposed to testify in a week's time, they shot and killed him 1 week before he was to testify. And then they stole all my files. At some point I said, okay.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
There's nothing you can do. You're done. So that's when I kind of took about a 20-year break.
Right. And then did you say something about the JFK and RJK? My gosh, Robert Kennedy Jr. What about that?
Well, that's what I found in my investigation. You see, I've never had what's called a conspiracy theory or anything like that.
Right.
I'm just someone who investigated, and I reported the facts. And my last report, my final report, went to the president and all the agencies, CIA, the House, the Senate. They got my final report. It's even on the web, and It just states the facts. It's my investigative report of what I found during my investigation, and it was quite clear. I found that James Oay did not shoot Martin Luther King. I found that Lee Harvey Oswald did not shoot President John F. Kennedy.
Right.
And I pretty much, it's not quite as tight as the Robert Kennedy thing.
Yeah.
But it's obvious to me that Sirhan Sirhan was not the shooter who killed Robert Kennedy.
Right.
Either.
So, yeah, I mean, I knew someone a long time ago, maybe, that was really wrote some books about John F. Kennedy assassination and how all of that, and gave talks on that. So, yeah, I think a lot of people have seen the movies, but you were actually working on a screenplay about Martin Luther King, right?
Well, we still are.
You still are.
It's in development. Now, Jeff Ohm is the new executive producer, and Cameron Arnett is set up as the director. We're working on it. It's coming, I believe, eventually. I may not be alive when it happens, but like the title of my book says, to live or maybe not.
Or maybe not, right? And then your children, you detail that are they all? They're all. Your one son, what?
Well, my oldest son's back in Finland now. He came here. He won the Finnish Star Contest in 2003. He had gone to Finland. He lived in Finland 16 years, and he was he did Broadway. He was a singer, dancer, actor. He grew up in Hollywood. He really became a star when he was about 8 years old. He sang the Whiz in an L.A. Cultural Affairs program, and he was the only white kid in the program. I think maybe there might have been one or two more, but he played the Whiz, and he sang that song, the Whiz. And I was there in the audience when it happened. He got a standing ovation. This woman in front of me, man, she jumped up. She said, "That little old white boy can sing." But yeah, that was it. He's been kind of a semi-star ever since then.
Oh, okay. And then you have a daughter. I think you say she's an accountant, or is she?
She Elizabeth, yeah, she's done
Yeah.
accounting for me, and she's an editor. She's edited some. She's a writer, editor. Yeah, she does a lot for me as well. She lives with me. Her and her 17-year-old daughter, my granddaughter Errol. Errol has autism, so she's
Right.
in homeschool for the most part.
Okay. And then you got a divorce from you were married to Linda, your first wife, for a long time, right?
Yeah, and that just we just we didn't. She stayed with my daughters so much. We didn't spend much time together, and when we did, we rarely had any intimacy really.
Mm-hmm.
One day we were just talking. She said maybe we should just get a divorce. We don't live like we're married anyway.
Right.
And I really didn't want to. I said, well, I don't really want to do that. But she said, well, I do. I said, okay, we'll do it. So we got a divorce. But I still love her.
Yeah, you took her to the hospital or something. I was reading like when she had to go to the hospital for something. So yeah, you still get along with her and that's good for your kids.
And she still lives with me anytime she wants to. I mean, we don't sleep together.
Right.
She has her own bed in her own room when she lives with me. But yeah, no, I love her to this day. And then I've had kind of a off and on relationship with another woman. We kind of got married. I just say it's complicated, like so many people do.
Oh, like on Facebook, yeah, in a relationship and it's complicated. So yeah, and yeah, so it's been it sounds like a life that you've done a lot, you've experienced a lot of not so good things, a lot of traumatic things, but then a lot of good things.
Oh yeah,
Right, yeah.
And I don't have any complaints. I mean, because when you do the kind of things I've done, when you do the kind of work I've done, you expect a certain amount of danger. And you're told. I mean, we're taught in naval intelligence. We're taught that you never say anything about your work.
Right.
Even if there's a scrap of paper, a little piece of paper that might connect you to that particular mission, you destroy it. You don't
Right.
let it exist. And the government's going to disown you. If you get caught, if it goes public, they're going to say, no, we don't know nothing about that. That guy's nuts.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, of all the places you lived, what place do you like the best?
Southern California.
Yeah.
For some reason, Hollywood, L.A. I've been in Texas since 2000 and when did I move out here? 2007. Yeah, 2007.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still not a real Texan yet. I mean, I'm not. I don't really have that kind of pride in Texas that most Texans do. I'm just an American. I don't.
Right.
I don't see the state particularly being more important than the others.
What made you move out to Texas?
2 daughters married soldiers
Oh,
and ended up in Texas, and kept calling, wanting me and their mom and all of us to come out there. They had husbands that were drinking and doing things, being violent and stuff, and so they had to have us come out and help them out, and that's why we ended up in Texas.
Oh, okay. And so, most of your kids live in Texas?
Now they do.
Yeah.
All of them but Gary Jr. He's in Finland. He's back. He went back to Finland in May of this year. He's doing another theater. He's doing summer theater out there.
Right. And Elle says she agrees with you because she loves Southern California. She moved to South Carolina last year from Southern California, but she's originally a Jersey girl. But she said she loves Southern California.
Yeah, I do. There's something about I don't know, something about it that's a little different to me than anywhere else. That's all I can say.
Yeah. I live in New York State. I was born in New Jersey, like right on the border, living in New York State, but the winters are getting a little bit crazy. I live on a lake. It's a beautiful place, especially fall, spring, summer, but I'd like to be down in South Carolina Edisto Island during the winter. My kids are too little right now; they're still in school, so I can't be a snowbird. My youngest kids. So, well, soon enough, if it's meant to be, it'll happen.
Yeah, well, not yet. Yeah. Yeah, well, I used to tell people I would not live in Texas. I mean, for years in Hollywood, I'd get into discussions with people about where they might like to live and what state and this kind of thing. And I've often said I will never live in Texas because I've been through here a couple of times and I don't know, it just didn't suit me.
Right.
But here I've been since 2007. See, so God always has plans for us that we don't know about sometimes,
Yeah, never say never. But that brings us to tell us about your relationship with Jesus, God, your spirituality.
Well, that happened when I was a kid. My mother wasn't really a churchgoer. But in Safety Harbor, I was maybe 11 years old. Maybe I just turned 12 when we did this. So she started taking us to that Assembly of God in Safety Harbor, and they had a young man come. It was his first time out as a evangelist, to do a revival. And he preached his heart out every night. It was a small church. There was probably no more than 20 or 30 folks there every night, and most of them were regular, churchgoers. But he preached his heart out every night and asked people to come up and get saved, and accept the Lord as their Savior, and nobody would go up. The last night, the last Sunday, he did that. I felt really sorry for him. And I thought, what, that poor guy's been preaching his heart out every night and nobody's went up. I'm going to go up tonight. I didn't go up to get saved. I just went up because I felt sorry for the guy. So I went up and then some of my friends came up. And so it was a more successful night for him anyway. And then a few months later, I got baptized in water. And then one night I read the book of John when I was in bed. Before I went to sleep. So that kind of started clearing things up for me, what was really going on there. Because my mother didn't really know too much about that stuff, enough to really explain it to me,
Yeah.
So then we moved to Bartow, Florida. And Bartow is a small town there just south of Lakeland. And I went to Bartow Junior High School then. And then she took me to church one night, and this is really when it happened. This was a fire and brimstone preacher that preached everybody right to hell. I mean, if you didn't live exactly like you should. But that night, I didn't really, it wasn't really the message. It was just the Spirit of God it was almost like my feet was on wheels. I never remember just getting up and walking, but I went from my seat down to the altar area just in a flash, and I opened my mouth to pray, and this foreign language starts coming out of my mouth. I start speaking in these other
tongues. Yeah.
Now I'm telling you, in a normal situation, a guy like that, they'd take him away. They'd put him in the street.
Right. Yeah.
But I was just a kid. I was 12 years old. And I was a small kid anyway. And I started speaking in tongues and walking around, and I would walk around, and everybody just left me alone, And I walked back up the between the aisles, and I would just reach out my hand, and I'd be speaking in tongues like this at another person, and they'd fall down.
Wow.
So I got this taste of the power of the Spirit of God when I was 12 years old. And it was like he just picked me up. See, I didn't have a father. My was divorced. And it was like he picked me up and said, I'm your daddy now.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Put his arms around me and said, I got you. But I did some crazy things that night. At one point, I was standing, and this, people tell me things of what I did that night that I didn't even remember. But at one point, I was standing on the pulpit, or that, the and I was preaching in tongues to the congregation, Now, I do remember going out of the church and walking across the street and ringing on the doorbell of the house across the street. And I had all these, the elders, and the pastor, they were following me around because they didn't know what I was going to do next. And I rang that doorbell. A guy came to the door and opened it. And I started speaking in tongues to him.
Oh, gosh.
But they finally got me back to church, and I got home. And then when I got home that night, I was in the kitchen. My mother was telling my aunt and my cousins. They all came over to the house. They all heard about it. They came over to the house. We were standing in the kitchen. My brother Kenneth came through the back door. He was the second oldest. Benny was the oldest. Benny was already in the Navy at the time. Kenny wasn't. But Kenny came through the back door about that time. It was about 11 o'clock at night. And Mother told him what happened, and he looked at me, and I said, Kenny, you want some of this? He said, yeah. So I just went like this with my hand, and he fell down. So I know, a lot of people don't understand these church atmospheres where things like that happen, and
Right.
some people just think it's crazy. It's just, it's just all fake. But it's not fake. There is some fake. There's some people who abuse the thing. Mm-hmm. But when God moves in His power, it's power. It's real power, and you can see powerful things happen in people's lives. Miracles and everything. But see, and that's what kept me. His
Right.
power. I've been shot. People have tried to kill me in many different ways. Wicked. And all this time, I've always said, okay, Jesus, this is your thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to do this, and you'll protect me. So I'm still alive today only because of Jesus and that power of the Holy Spirit.
Right. So you have a very strong faith. You don't ever get doubts or anything like that at any time, or?
Look, I'm a human being.
Yeah.
I am not perfect. No man, no woman, nobody is perfect in this world.
Yeah.
God is perfect, but we're not.
Right.
We're not. Sometimes we think we are, but we are not God. And I have my failings. I am not a perfect man. No, I've been depressed. I've been through some horrible things.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I'm diagnosed with PTSD right now.
Right.
Post-traumatic stress disorder. So, Christians, people who know God and walk with God, that doesn't prevent them from being human.
Right. Yeah. People have doubts all the time, and they can have faith, strong faith, but they can have doubts. Myself included. And sometimes when really bad things happen, I lost my oldest son, and when that happened, I struggle with that every day. Like, what's up here. And a lot of things, and you've had a lot of losses as well. So I think it's natural that we question things, and we want so much to have that faith, that really, really, really strong faith that doesn't falter. And I have a friend that has that, and she's went through terrible tragedies, lost her daughter and her grandchildren murdered. But has seen Jesus, so and talks about this, and says, if that didn't happen, I wouldn't have the faith that she has, but she does. So it's always good to talk to people that have very, very strong faith, because it helps those of us that sometimes struggle, like, to see,
Yeah.
But that's but you said you became a preacher at one point.
I founded a church in Los Angeles, a place we called it Church on the Ranch. There was another one before it and kind of after it, I pastored for a while. That's when I learned about the homosexual thing. Before then, I had preached homosexuals right into hell. I had taken the pulpit and taken the Bible. Said, if you're homosexual, you're going to go to hell if you don't get straightened up. And even later on, I found out my son was gay. Mm-hmm. And today, it took me a while, but I realized I've got two sons that are gay, and a daughter that was bisexual for a while. But here's what I learned. Let me tell you how this happened.
Sure.
This is really, really important for preachers. If any preachers are listening to this and they haven't realized this yet, you really should listen intently to this. I was in my office one day, and a young man and young woman came to me and said, we need your help. My wife, she was there. She doesn't want to have sex with me. We're Catholic, and the priest tells her, well, you have to. That's your job as a wife, And so, well, come in, sit down. We start talking, and she said, well, it hurts. I don't enjoy it. So why should I do it if I don't enjoy it? He enjoys it, but And so as soon as I heard that, I just looked at him. I said, listen. Number one, don't do it. Okay, if you don't enjoy it, sex is not something you do to hurt another person. It's something that you both enjoy, and if both are not enjoying it, don't do it.
Right.
I got that done, and then she stood up and she said, "Look, I'm a woman," and she pulled her blouse open to show her, breast out there with her husband there. And you see, I'm a normal woman, so we're trying to figure out why this is what it is.
Right.
And he said, yeah, he said she's a feminine, beautiful, sexy woman, and attracts me, like that. But yet at some point it don't work, So I said, okay, look, why don't y'all come in, once a week for a while, and let's see if we can, pray and help the Lord lead us through this. Well, about the third week, I got the number of her sister in Mexico. They were both from Mexico. And I called her sister, and I explained what was happening. She said, well, she doesn't know. And I said, she doesn't know what? And she said, well, when she was born, she had both male and female genitalia.
Oh.
The doctor and my mom and dad said, well, she looks more girl than boy. So they told the doctor just, surgically remove those other parts there.
Right.
And we'll just forget this didn't happen. It ever happened. And they never told her. She grew up as a girl thinking she was fully woman. And it turned out that she just didn't have the equipment to enjoy sex as a woman would, or to get pregnant or anything else. And that was why she looked like a woman, but she didn't have the inside equipment. See? And that was DNA.
Right, yeah.
When I tell people now, and preachers, I've met with many of them, I've had luncheons where I've talked to, hundreds at a time, and look, this is a DNA issue. When they say that they don't decide this is just who they are, they're absolutely right. They're telling you the truth. This is their DNA, and it's up to us preachers and the church to love these people, to welcome them and let them, many of them are good Christians. They love Jesus,
Yeah.
they follow Jesus, but they're gay. So what?
Right.
We all sin, So, that's the way I look at it now. But I was on the other side for many years. I was totally convinced that if they was gay, they would die and go to hell.
Right, and so I mean, like a lot of those, I've seen it, like those preachers that are up there preaching against that, and then they're caught in the car with a male prostitute, right? And it's like, and they're just up there saying that that's it, you're dead, you're going to hell, and how does that happen? Okay, but so yeah, it's just.
Yeah.
I don't know. We've heard those stories, but yeah, I think it's just love. I mean, it's not for us. It just people judge them on with their actions and are they a good person or a bad person, not their sexuality, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's how I feel, at least. I mean, it's not my place, and I just think that
and I understand those that are convinced that they're right. They pick out these certain scriptures and they preach them and they teach them and they really do believe, as I did at one time, that they are right, that this is God's word. But see, God is a much bigger thing than us human beings can really. There's no box that we can put God in.
right.
It's like trying to catch the water in a net. In a cast, God is so much bigger than any net we would have to try to capture His essence and His likes and all. We can forget that. It's not going to happen.
Right.
What we want to do is just try to be the best person we can be with God's help, and not try to
Right.
force people into our perspective of what they should be if they are godly or whatever.
Yeah, and I know God would want us. I mean, like any religion that like people say, or any religion especially that tells you to hate someone is not a religion you should be in. And I don't believe any God would ever tell you, oh, to hate. You know, like there's people that carry signs like Jesus hates whatever. You know, fill in the blank. Okay. No, you know, I don't even like when people go on Facebook and Jesus hates ugly, because I don't think Jesus hates anyone, okay? So it's like, but these people put this stuff on this, you know, like they know and we don't. And I just think our God is a loving God that would never tell us, you know, oh, I need you to hate those people there. Because even when we have people that do like incredible wrongs, I remember my daughter was making her first Holy Communion, and we were in the church for one of the sacraments before, and a bunch of mothers and I. And this one, Susan Smith, did you ever hear that case? She drowned her 2 little boys in the lake and then blamed it on a black man. And okay. So that had just happened, and it was like really reeling with a lot of us. And the nun was there, and she's like, well, you know, what's going on? We're like, did you hear about this? I'm like, I just want to spend like 5 minutes with that lady. And she said, well, you have to pray for her. And we're like, at that time, she's just like, because, you know, there's something wrong that she did this. And like, none of us were like on that. We're like, we just wanted to get there and, you know, rip her apart. But because these 2 little boys suffered this incredible thing, and they were I had a little boy the same age with the same names. And, but yeah, I remember she said that. She said it's hard, but you have to. So yeah, they're not going to tell, you know, to hate anyone. So it's like, you know, it's hard.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you know, Jesus himself, after he was tortured, I mean, he was beaten. That whip cut into his back. You know, they found out now, you know, through looking at this from a medical point of view, that he was just his back was just slashed to the bone, and you know, his hair was pulled out of his beard, and I mean, he was just beaten and suffered so much, and yet, as he breathed his last breath on the cross and all that pain, he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
Yeah.
I think that's love. See, when you can love even your enemy, the enemy who has just tortured you horribly and killed you, you can say, Father, forgive them. Now, if he forgives those, then obviously he's forgiven all sin.
Right. Yeah.
He's already forgiven it. You know, all we have to do is accept his forgiveness and love.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. And yeah, it's just something incredible, like Passion of the Christ that my friend I was telling you about. She always says, you've got to watch that. You've got to, you know, tell anybody to watch that, because you really see how Jesus suffered incredibly for us, you know, and went through this. And so she likes when sometimes we're going through stuff, and I mean, she's had horrible things. Her daughter was murdered, and she has people that side with the murderer. And if she has a YouTube cooking show, and they'll go there and they'll heckle her like about her daughter, okay, who was murdered. And like sometimes, you know, and I get it too with my son. It's crazy. So she'll say, you know, what we go through, like as bad as it is, that you think of what Jesus went through, and he was called a liar, and you're not this, and you're not that. You know, and so it puts it in perspective that, wow, you know, you're not the only one persecuted or called a liar, you know, just all this stuff. It's just crazy. Yeah, right? What Jesus went through, and when so many go through, you know, being called things they're not. And yeah, so.
This just kind of brings to mind, would you like to hear something about a new project that I've just started the last couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, sure.
Well, it's a person by the name of Brenda Joy Dickey, and she, at 10 years old, she was raped, kidnapped. Just horrible things were done to her. They did find her. She was a missing person for a while. Find her in the hospital. But none of her, several people were involved in that. Young people.
Young people. Where's that?
not exactly her age, but a little older, and none of them have really been. The law has never, you know, been a part of this. Her parents did not go to the police, and she's lived with this all over, and her life is just one horrible thing after another.
Wow.
And so, she asked me to help her, with getting a book out and on. So we signed a contract, where I'm going to work with her to get her book published and maybe do a movie or a documentary about it.
How old is she now?
Like, this happened in 1970, so she was 10 then. It's 1970, so she probably, let's see, 80, 90, she's 50 something, I guess.
Okay, and what state did it happen in?
50 something. Happened in Los Angeles.
Los Angeles. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. So you're working with her to write a book and then maybe a movie about it.
Right.
Yeah. And is that may help her? I don't know where she is and how do you heal from all of that, but is that helping her heal? But
it will, I'm sure, because see that when I started writing my book, it was therapeutic.
Mm-hmm.
It took me, as I began to write and deal with some of the issues, related to, well, you can say this, you can't say that, and just working out that kind of a puzzle of,
Right.
where's the line, slowly but surely that was therapeutic. That really helped me. And even to this day, I get threatened by the president's office on down. My senator and my local congressman. I get told, look, you cannot divulge secrets that you've signed with the United States government saying that you would keep.
Right.
It's consequences, and it's true. I mean, you see, and this is what's really weird. There's people in prison. I mean, I could go to federal prison or worse, be terminated if I talk too much about some things, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And people in prison today, federal prison, who have crossed that line, and some not intentionally always. So it's amazing to me how anyone can flaunt those laws in public and get away with it. I don't, that's a little bit hard to understand, even at my level.
Well, and I noticed that, like in your book, when you say that you the person, like sometimes you're in the first person, sometimes second or third person, depending on what happened and how you're processing it, and it's easier to write about trauma and as in third person, right? So so that was interesting. But this is Gary's book, and it's To Live or Maybe Not, and I have a link to the Amazon book. It's pinned on the top. It's also in the video description. Yeah, you also have a YouTube channel, right?
I have a YouTube channel. I have Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Yeah, I have all those
TikTok,
things.
That's great. And then you have a website, and so you're around. They can connect with you on any of those platforms, Facebook.
And this new edition, the 28th edition of this book, it's in a there's a couple of pictures in there that look better in color. So I've got a premium edition that has color and a little bit better pages, and then I have a black and white edition that's much cheaper. So for people who just want the book and not the better version, they can get it cheaper. And then, of course, it's on Kindle and ebook.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think there's a special on it on Kindle right now on Amazon. When I was putting the link in, I think they have a special on the Kindle version. Yeah, and you don't have to have an actual Kindle reader. That just is, it's you can read it on any tablet or device like that. Yeah, so it's been a pleasure having you here, and maybe you'll stop by again and sometime. It was very nice. And again, To Live or Maybe Not, Gary Revel, thank you so much. Is there anything you want to add before we go? Anything you want to say?
No, I'll not for me, but I just want to tell you that God bless you. I'm praying for you too, because I know you've had some struggles. So
thank you. God bless you too. Thank you.
I think bringing other people's stories out helps other people. So doing a great thing, so I just encourage you to keep doing what you're doing.
Oh, thank you very much. I need to hear that. Thank you. And everybody in chat and everything, if you have any questions, you can put them in the comments. And then you could check back. They say, love this guy. Great chat. So you've got a lot of positive comments here in the live chat, but then there'll be comments afterwards. And I usually put a little pin comment. So if you have any questions for Gary, because we have a lot of people that watch on the replay, like they're at work now and stuff. So then they can put a little question in if they have it. If you want to go there and check it out, you can. And like I said, we'd love to have you back sometime. So God bless you. Thank you so much for coming, and I appreciate the chat.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. Bye-bye, everybody. Have a great day. I'll talk to you guys later. We have another interview tonight, 5 hours from now, with another very interesting gentleman, and who has went through his share of traumatic experiences. So you're not going to want to miss that. That's 8 o'clock Eastern time. See you guys later. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. God bless.